Hi, everyone. Welcome to our weekly text commentary of A Course in Miracles. Today we are talking about Chapter 4, Section 5. So far I'm in love with Chapter 4, but I was reminding myself that I was also in love with Chapter 3 not that long ago. So it might just be my love affair with every single chapter of the Course. So we're going to dive in. I have a lot to say about this section. There's a couple of just big concepts here that big aha moments. And also during our discussion today, and I know I don't normally record those, so for those of you listening to the recordings, I would love to hear how playing with this need not be was this week for you all. So I want to talk, I'll do our opening prep, but I want to talk about two different concepts so far from Chapter 4. Remember we talked in Chapter 4, I think it was Section 2, about the ambivalence, about how we really go to defend our ego, but we don't spend the same amount of time or energy defending our connection to God or the spirit within us, or our oneness. Those are all the words I was trying to get out at the exact same moment. And we don't spend the energy focusing on that. Or we say, in a moment we might spend some energy on that, but the minute something difficult happens or whatever, we're quick to give up our faith in God and less quick to give up our faith in our ego or in our separate body or in protecting ourselves or calling somebody else for being wrong or judging somebody. So that was the ambivalence we talked about in 4.2. Also in 4.2, I don't know if you all remember this, where the Course was saying, part of your ambivalence comes because 1 second you love yourself and you think, oh, I'm really cool and I've got everything right. And then, 1 second later, you're like, I can't get anything right. I don't, what's wrong with me? And, so our ambivalence to not even being able to stay consistent in our own belief about ourselves or about somebody else. 1 second we love somebody, they do one action, and now all of a sudden we think they're crap, and this whole ambivalence. So 4.2 ambivalence, I want to remind you of that. And then in 4.4, our last section, we talked about this need not be, and that continues the whole choosing for this right-mindedness, that just because we've had a thought or something that's causing suffering, we don't need to go down that roller coaster ride with that thought. This need not be. So those are the two key points that we'll really we'll go into a little more about that here in 4.5. So I wanted to remind you of those. So just wherever you are, go ahead and take a nice deep breath. And just maybe bring your shoulders up to your ears and then let them, squeeze them high and then let them drop. And another breath. And just repeat silently after me as I do our opening prep for tonight's session. I dedicate this time to healing my mind and awakening to my true nature. I surrender to the source of love within me and let it guide my way. As I do this mind healing work, I'm willing to be mindful of my thoughts without judgment. I am willing to look at how I view my life circumstances as helpful feedback. I am willing to take responsibility for letting go of limiting thoughts and beliefs. I am willing to let go of judgments about myself and others. I am willing to quiet my mind and ask the Holy Spirit to take the lead. I am willing to let go of tension. I soften and imagine the Holy Spirit leading me into peace. My aware self leads me as I now focus on healing my mind. Just go ahead and take a nice deep breath. And we will get started. So I'm going to read to you all from this book, The Message of A Course in Miracles, and it's basically Course in Miracles made easy. So it's the text in plain language. So I'm going to read, and then, but what I'd still like to do is actually read from the course itself. So if everyone's good to read tonight, we'll just go Karen, Leslie, Stephanie in that order. So Karen, I'm going to read paragraph 1, and then you just follow. I'll tell you when I'm done, and then you just follow. And actually, why don't you read first, and then I'll read, and then I'll talk.
Okay.
Let's do it that
Okay.
way.
All things work together for good. There are no exceptions except in the ego's judgment. The ego exerts maximal vigilance about what it permits into awareness, and this is not the way a balanced mind holds together. The ego is thrown further off balance because it keeps its primary motivation from your awareness and raises control rather than sanity to predominance. The ego has every reason to do this according to the thought system which gave rise to it and which it serves. Sane judgment would inevitably judge against the ego and must be obliterated by the ego in the interest of its self-preservation.
Okay,
Wow.
so yeah, you can read just fine until you have to read in front of other people. I know how that goes.
Exactly.
Personal experience. Okay, let me read what it says from the book. Everything in the world that you perceive can be used to help you to remember that you are one with God. But the personal mind wants to keep this from your awareness. The personal mind is concerned with control, not with wholeness. This makes sense from its perspective since it arose from your denial of wholeness. You will inevitably recognize with your entire mind that the personal mind is not real, but the personal mind must keep this hidden from you in order to preserve itself. Okay, so two concepts in this is control and wholeness. So when you feel like you are a small piece, you feel like, oh my gosh, I better protect myself. What if this happens? What if that happens? I can't handle it. I must stay in control. But when you realize that you're part of everything, what is there to control? You are part of everything. So everything that happens is exactly as it should happen, is God's will. And God's will is also your will because you're one with God, and therefore you're one with everything that's happening. So control versus wholeness. I know we talk a lot, and I know on coaching too, I talk a lot about this concept of control. In my own life, I talk a lot about this concept of control. And then I talk about being in the flow, which to me is letting go of control and just being into this state of wholeness and the state of oneness and the state of just allowing things to happen instead of trying to figure out how to make them happen and getting out there and making them happen. All of that is a lot of pressure. And that's what we're taught is the way to live life. You got to get out there and make it happen. And, you know, it's not just going to come to you. And what we're learning is the more you sit back and sit in that seat of awareness, sit in that seat of oneness within yourself, the more it really does just show up and come to you, that you really don't have to do anything. But the problem is that if I went around just an average, you know, it's Christmas party last night. If I went around and just said this at the Christmas party last night, people would think I was nuts. They would be like, no, that's not how it's worked in my life. But the truth is that very few of us, if any of us, really give that a chance. We might try it for 10 seconds, the ambivalence. We try it for 10 seconds and then we don't get our way immediately and we go, oh, this doesn't work. I better get back into the driver's seat and take control. I can't let this take more than 10 seconds. It's clearly not working. if it's taking more time than I think it should take. So the control versus wholeness is a big concept. So I have a whole page of notes just on 4.1. So I'm going to spend a couple minutes here, get comfy. So the goal of the personal mind, i.e. the ego mind, is control. The goal of the spirit mind is oneness. So let's talk about this concept of all things work for good. So if you have that belief system, which a lot of spiritual folks who consider themselves spiritual will say, you know, I really believe everything works for good. I believe the universe is good. I believe God just wants good things for me. I believe even when bad things happen, they're for my highest good. Eventually, something good will come out of that. So we say these concepts and, you know, we say these to ourselves, but really think about believing that. If you actually believe that, what would your life look like if that was like the end all be all truth for you? Like, would you freak out about the bill that was a little bit more than you expected it to be this month? If you really truly believe that concept, would you be upset that you got fired if you really truly believe that concept? So when you really think about this concept, it's easy to say, it sounds good to say, but really if you're believing that, really believe that everything's happening for your highest good, it really would be a different life that we'd all be living. Sure as heck wouldn't be any stress or pressure because it's all happening for our highest good. So it's really a different level. And we're getting to this point now in the course and in how we're studying that we just want to become aware. Nobody's expecting any of us to be perfect at this, but really just becoming aware of the things that we stress about and the things that we worry about and how any of those things take us out of this idea of oneness. And some of the things that we stress about and worry about, some of the examples I just used, like losing your job, you know, that's a big mountain to climb. That's a hard one. But we also stress about little things. You know, we kind of lose it and feel like we need to have control because, you know, everybody's not in the car at the exact moment we think everyone should be in the car. I mean, we do this about a lot of things, right? And so I'm using the example of losing your job as, you know, okay, well, maybe we could have a little wiggle room there, but what's her excuse for every other little thing we try to control? So today, Mike and I drove to another town, and there's this cool grocery store there that I like. I drive to a grocery store, I can get the trunk to close on the car. The latch just like would not latch. And I literally was confused because I was like, well, I know I should drive back to where I dropped Mike off and try to get this trunk thing. I mean, I don't know what, go to dealership. I don't know what we're supposed to do, but like we should try to figure this out. But I was going to go to the grocery store. And it's like, I just had to stand there because I literally didn't know what to do because I had a plan. And the plan was to go to the grocery store. Mm-hmm. And then something happened. And it's like, well, do I just go to the grocery store and leave the trunk open and then go back? Or do I not go to the like, what do I do in this situation? And finally I was like, okay, I think taking care of the trunk is more important than the grocery store. But it like took me like a good 5 minutes of just like back and forth of like, well, this wasn't how I expected today to go. And that need for control. I mean, that's not something that we would say is controlling behavior normally. Like that would just be considered normal behavior. But the reason it took me 5 minutes was because I had a plan and things were not going according to plan. So God's will versus your will. It is really something, again, easy to say, very difficult in the moment to say, oh, right, I'm not in control. Like I'm not the one who's deciding what happens next. I'm not the one who's moving everything around behind the scenes. I'm just here allowing things to happen and doing my best to respond in a oneness attitude to what's happening over here. So really thinking about that. Okay, now the course gets into this, which I think is really interesting, because I've heard Marianne Williamson talk about this too. And in 4.1 or V.mp4 one was the first time I kind of saw a reference to in the course, so I want to point this out to us. So when bad things happen, what we would consider bad things, what we would consider a tragedy, right? Everyone can kind of agree the thing that happens doesn't come from the place of love. So when bad things happen, they're actually not God's will. God does not will these horrible things to happen, what we would consider a tragedy. Bad things happen because we individually are acting out of a state of insanity. So when we act out of a state of insanity, there's repercussions to our actions, aka bad things. However, every bad thing, every time we act out of insanity, so let's talk about some of the language here. So Course in Miracles uses the term, redefines or reuses the term sin to be where you miss the mark. So sin is not this bad, you're evil and a horrible person, but it's where you made a decision. You chose out of a mindset of fear instead of a mindset of love. So you missed the mark. You tried, you didn't make it, you got to try again. Because that's the concept of sin. So in the section, it says every time there is a sin, every time you miss the mark, the Holy Spirit can use that as a way of bringing about a good outcome. So God does not create these evil, horrible events. Our insanity, our competition, our judgment, us being in this mindset creates that, which is why it's very important that each of us protect our mindset, because we are part of that one mind. So, all of us hating one thing or hating one person adds energy. We're all one mind. So we're adding energy to that thing that we don't want. So it's important for us to be aware of what we're thinking and protect our mind and side with love as often as possible, because there is repercussions to those thoughts. So we create on that level, right? That's not God creating a bad thing. That's us creating on that level. However, and this is where that kind of, there is no such thing as a bad thing. Every single bad thing has a seed of something good in it, a seed of healing, a seed of something even more beautiful coming out of that tragedy. And that's where, when we have missed the mark, when we've sinned and missed the mark, we ask for that miracle. We ask for something good to come out of that. And that's where we engage the Holy Spirit to do that. Okay, so I'm just going to pause because I have more stuff to say there. So is there any questions or thoughts on that before I go into the ego's maximal vigilance?
No, that was good.
I agree.
All right. So ego exerts maximal vigilance on what it allows us to consciously think about. Okay, so the ego is running 24/7 and placing thoughts into our conscious awareness. So we already know this. You've got your conscious mind, your subconscious mind, and then the superconscious mind. Okay, so spirit is in superconscious. We've got conscious, which is can connect with the superconscious. It can connect with the subconscious. It's just what's in our current moment of awareness. So superconscious, conscious, and then the subconscious. Okay, so spirit is working on the superconscious level, which is why we meditate or go inwards, because then we connect our conscious mind with the superconscious, i.e. the place of the spirit. Ego works on our subconscious mind and allows certain thoughts to come up into our conscious awareness. Usually very fear-based thoughts is what it's allowing through. So it has maximal vigilance. It is constantly vigilant about which thought it allows through. Now, I'm sure you can relate to this example. It happened to me just today. You're sitting there, you're perfectly happy. I was watching the sunset. It was gorgeous. I heard something on the radio that was upsetting. And all of a sudden I went from a fantastic, amazing, one with God, one with the world mood to like so sad and so upset, just like poof, right over there. And it's because of what got allowed into my conscious mind there. So I heard the story on the radio, sad story. And then all of a sudden I started relating the story to my life. I created a story about the story I'm hearing. And now all of a sudden I went from this perfectly fine, not even fine, like peaceful, happy state into this like total dip over there. And that's because of what got allowed into my mind at that moment and what I did with what got allowed into my mind. So, I can't control what comes on the radio. I could not listen to the radio. That's one way to control it. But, most people can listen to a radio. You hear something you don't like, turn it off or just go, oh, that's unfortunate, move on, right? But I took that story, personalized it, created my own story, related it to my life. And now the segment on the radio is way over, right? But now I've got this whole process that's going on over there. That is the ego's maximal vigilance. Take you out of that state of oneness. And I was just in that state of oneness moments before. And it's that easy to just slip right out. So Course is saying over here, ego, you're not aware of the fact that the thoughts that you're thinking are thoughts that are allowed to come through to your mind. And what's allowed to come through to your mind is based on where you're putting your time, energy, and belief system. So now we go back to 4.2, where I said, you're so, where the Course was talking about, we're so invested in protecting our ego. How much time and energy do we invest in protecting our relationship with God, our connection to God, our connection to Source, our connection to oneness? So if we're not waking up every single morning and turning our day over to that higher purpose or connecting in that super conscious and making that connection every single day, and that's one time a day. I mean, it's once every morning that we're doing that to try to counter the thousands of pieces of information that are coming towards us that will feed this ego thought system, that will feed this thought system of separation. So this vigilance of what our thoughts were, and it wasn't until Mike said, yeah, I don't know how you're so upset. You were just so happy a second ago. And I remembered this lesson and I was like, oh my gosh, you're right. I totally just allowed something to come into my conscious awareness. And I took this thought and I went on it, and I could just go back and remember watching the sunset and remember that thought of oneness and create that conscious awareness, which is what I did to get out of the funk. Was I just went back and I was like, could kind of just erase this thought or just quit giving it the energy that I'm giving it. So 4.1, as you all can see, really getting us to think about where we're spending our time and energy on which thoughts, and what are the effects of where we're spending our time and energy. What are the effects with these ego-based, fear-based thoughts on us, and what are the effects of this super conscious oneness thought system on our day-to-day living, on our moment-to-moment living, on our mood, on our outcomes, on how we're feeling. And all of it comes with becoming vigilant about the thoughts that we're thinking and not being tolerant. I could sit here and very easily justify to you all, I didn't choose to hear that story on the radio. I wasn't choosing that. It just happened that I heard it. And what am I supposed to do? And I'm just human. And I could justify it. But at the end of the day, I don't want to justify being in that fear-based mindset. So I could justify it. I could convince you all, I'm sure, out of love for me, you all would agree with me. But at the end of the day, it just ruined my own mood. Why would I spend my time and energy justifying that? What good comes out of that for me or anybody else on this planet? So that's really the vigilance we're talking about over here. So how much vigilance are you allowing to protect your ego versus protecting your right mind? So your balanced mind works unconsciously. So your balanced mind, you've got your superconscious, and then you've got your ego working on your subconscious and allowing things into your conscious mind. But your balanced mind is actually in the unconscious, because when you are just in the flow, you're not consciously thinking, what's my next step? What's my next step? What's my next step? You're just following your joy, which is your unconscious, right? You're not consciously doing you're just like, oh, that sounds like fun. I guess I'll go do that. Oh, that sounds like fun. I guess I'll go do that. That sounds like fun. I guess I'll go do that. And you're in the flow And unconsciously, you're connecting with your superconscious, and that's what's in your conscious awareness. So your ego is what allows into your conscious, and it does also work in your subconscious, but so does the spirit. And the way that you know you're in spirit is you're aligned with joy. And that's how you know that you're connecting on that your subconscious to your superconscious level. That's what a balanced mind looks like. Ego. So I thought about all the marketing, right? Ego works. This is what I wrote. I'm going to read you guys exactly what I wrote because it's adorable. Ego works behind the scenes in the dark and makes your life seem incomplete because you are less than. And the minute I wrote that, I wrote next to it marketing, because there's always something else. You just need a little more something, and then your life's going to be fine. You just need to buy our product, and then you will finally be happy. This is the one product you've been missing your whole life, and that's the only thing that's keeping you from happiness. And then you buy that product, and it's like, oh, no, you need this special other product to go with that product if you actually wanted to be happy. And this is how the ego mind works. It always makes you feel like there's just that one more little thing, and then you could be happy. If you just got that job, or if you just weren't in debt, or if you just met that person, it's just that one more little thing, and then you'd be happy. And that's the way the viciousness and the manipulation of the ego mind working in the dark, which again reminds me of marketing. It's just kind of like in that dark place of don't be happy now. Okay. So that's it for paragraph 1. Questions, comments, thoughts?
I've always thought about marketing like that too. And I'm surprised you brought it up, because I always look at television commercials like that. I mean, that's just exactly what they're doing.
Right.
Yeah. And you're not happy until you have this and have this and have this. And it's so hard for little kids. I can just, imagine thinking that they need this and they need this, and that's why they're not happy, Yeah.
Just a less than.
Yeah. It's bad. I don't think they need to market to little kids anyway.
Well, it's very all about with our ego thinking, right? Because that's the same thing with the ego, because, then you get the promotion, and it's like you get the promotion, you get the more money, and you're so happy for a short period of time. And then also like, well, I actually needed something slightly different than what I'm getting. Always a little bit more. That's how the ego keeps you in that hook.
Yeah. You need to be doing this, and then you get that done. Well, then there's this now you have to do. And I noticed that when I started taking horsemanship lessons and stuff, and I would do one thing. I would think, if I could just go to this one clinic, it would be so fun, and I'd have the best time of my life. And, so you do it, and you spend the money, and you go, and you spend the time, and you do the work, and you're so excited because it is so fun. And 2 weeks later, you're like, I think I need to go to another clinic. And it could just go on like that forever, because you never get enough.
Right. And what do we call that, Karen, in life?
I don't know.
Addiction.
Oh, yeah,
addiction. Right?
Sure.
So all of us have, and that addiction is just being aligned with your ego, because we all have addiction. It might not be a chemical addiction, but all of us have that. If I could just have a little more X, my life would work. And that's an addictive mindset, right? It's
right.
Which is how the ego works in the mindset of addiction. That's why any addiction, the only way to heal it is with oneness, with feeling complete in enough yourself exactly as you are, without one more little thing. That's the only way to heal a chemical addiction, as well as any other type of addiction. Have to change that thought system altogether.
Right. Thinking that you need more.
Exactly.
I've seen it work. I've seen it work with money with a whole lot of people. They think they need just more money. That's all it would take to make me happy. If I could just make more, and they get a raise, and then pretty soon they're still in debt like before they got the raise, and then they need more money. And
Exactly.
it's a never-ending thing.
Exactly. All right, let's move on to paragraph 2. So, Miss Leslie, you gonna read that?
Yes, I
right.
will. Okay. A major source of the ego's off-balance state is its lack of discrimination between the body and the thoughts of God. Thoughts of God are unacceptable to the ego because they clearly point to the non-existence of the ego itself. The ego therefore either distorts them or refuses to accept them. It cannot, however, make them cease to be. It therefore tries to conceal not only unacceptable body impulses, but also the thoughts of God, because both are threatening to it. Being concerned primarily with its own preservation in the face of threat, the ego perceives them as the same. By perceiving them as the same, the ego attempts to save itself from being swept away, as it would surely be in the presence of knowledge.
Okay. The whole purpose of this paragraph is to show us that the ego is nuts and that all of us are interesting because we want to defend this thing that's completely nuts. So let me read from the other book here. The personal mind is threatened by both the body, which it sees as unworthy of it, and the Holy Spirit, which will undo it. It cannot completely obliterate the Holy Spirit from your mind, though, so it distorts the Holy Spirit's loving thoughts into an unacceptable physical impulse to love another. Seeing physical love and the Holy Spirit's love as one threat makes it easier for you to repress them both and to preserve the personal mind, because the Holy Spirit's love will undo the personal mind. Okay, so the undoing of the ego is you accepting that you are one with God, and your greatness and your oneness undoes the ego. So obviously the ego doesn't want you to connect to the thoughts of God because it would be out of a job. Now, again, Course in Miracles, very much so the way it talks about the ego and the way that the ego is used throughout the Course in Miracles, it's almost like this horrible, evil villain. I mean, you read what I wrote, works in the dark, sneaking around. And, we talk about this ego as this evil villain, but in the truth is the ego is just there to defend your body. And it's misguided in that it thinks that you're a separate body. And if you are a separate body, if that were true, if that were a true statement that you're a separate body, well, then there's a heck of a lot to protect you from. And so the ego is just doing its job and protecting you. If that thought system that you are a separate body, you did not have a higher connection were true, it would make sense. It would be an important job. So it's not like the ego is evil or any of that, but it's stuck in this. It's like allowing a 2-year-old to run your life for you. They're going to make decisions that make no sense whatsoever, but to a 2-year-old, they make perfect sense because that's just the level of which they're at. Okay, so what's happening here is if you believe that you're one with God, then the ego doesn't have a job. So out of self-preservation, wants to block any of those thoughts that you're one with God. Well, one of the ways that you experience oneness with God is by having a connection with another human being. So when I connect with another human being and I have that beautiful falling in love moment, whether it's romantic or just as a friend or just some random person you met at the grocery store, and you're just like, you just have this moment and you just feel like, oh my God, I love this person, they love me. And it's just this glorious, instantaneous, momentary connection. That reminds you of your oneness to God. Okay, when you have that instantaneous, momentary connection. What the ego does is when you have that feeling of connection with another human being, especially if they're of the opposite sex, the ego makes it a distorted body image and makes it about that which it is not. So many times you might see somebody and have this just overwhelming feeling of love, what spiritual terms sometimes is refers to as agape love. You just fall in love with that moment. And the ego will say, oh my gosh, you just want to sleep with that person. That's all that is. What is wrong with you? Oh my gosh, you are out of control. Because if you understood that in that moment that you quote unquote fell in love with that person had nothing to do with that physical feeling, even though it might stir that up within you. It's not about that. It's that in that moment you remembered who you really were. You saw them for who they really were. You had that moment of connection. You actually remembered God or the oneness mindset, or you had that magical moment. So the ego has to turn it into, oh my God, there's something wrong with you. And you should not tell people about that, because that would be terrible if they found out. And so that is how the ego uses your body, which is its playground, right? The ego relates to the ego, body, spirit, the oneness mindset, right? Where the body is just a tool for learning. That's how the ego then turns around and uses your body as something that's beneath it or less than or not good enough for the ego. So on one hand, we're talking, go back to ambivalence. On one hand, the ego says, hey, you're a separate body and I'm here for you. I'm going to do everything I can to take care of your body. And in the very next breath, the ego goes, what the heck is wrong with your body? You've got some crazy impulses that your body wants to do. I'm so much better than your body. You're kind of not good enough for me. So on one hand, it loves your body, would do anything to protect it. On the other hand, you're not good enough for the ego. So this is the ambivalence that this is the mental chatter in our brains where we don't understand why we're not getting stuff done and why we're not creating at the level that we know. Well, if I'm one with God, I know I can create at this level. This is the mental chatter that keeps us stuck all the time, because one minute we're this amazing body and the ego's got our back and it's going to protect us and not going to let anybody hurt us, and how dare this person look at you. And the next moment it's like, well, yeah, she looked at you, but did you really need to react that way? What the heck is wrong with you? Boom, 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 boom. Can't get anything done. So that's why A Course in Miracles is saying, and this is the thing that you defend. And this is the thing that you say is myself. And this is the thing that you spend all your time and energy listening to. Wouldn't it just be easier to close your eyes, take a deep breath, go back inside, sit into your seat of awareness, sit in your seat of oneness and say, Holy Spirit, I hand this over to you. Tell me where would you have me go? What would you have me do? What would you have me say and to whom? You think that is too difficult? You'd rather sit here and defend this insanity. So it's our insanity and the thoughts we're allowing is really getting pointed out to us here in this section. Okay, so the undoing, I think I already said on my notes here. The undoing of the ego, watch our thoughts and question our actions. So the way that you undo this, and we continue into this in the next few sections, is why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? So I talk a lot about my best friend here, where something happens at work and she's like, I'm just going to call him and tell him blah, blah, blah. I'm just going to send this email and stuff. And I'm like, why? Why are you doing what you're doing? What is your true motivation? Because we start at this high level of, I just want to let them know, but when we really come down this funnel and get really into your why, it's because I want to make sure they know that they're wrong, not me. I didn't mess this up. You messed this up. That's why I'm doing this. All right, let's sit with that for a second. So you're going to tell them that I'm innocent and they're not. And then what? Then you'll be at peace? Probably not. If you've ever tried it, you're signing yourself up for a hell of a lot of non-peace. You're not going to be at peace. You're going to feel better about yourself? Probably not, because after you put yourself in a situation of non-peace, you're going to beat yourself up for putting yourself in that situation. Because if I was right and I knew I was right, why'd I really have to say anything? I knew I was right in the first place. And now I look like an idiot because I knew I was right, but I acted like an idiot to prove I was right. But nothing good's going to come out of this. So I love this. I saw this on Facebook a while ago and I've been using it. Wait, why am I talking? It's been really good. I find myself in situations and like people are having a conversation around me and it's not a loving conversation. And I just want to help. just want to tell them that they're really misguided souls and that their conversation is causing their suffering on earth. And I just want to help. And I open my mouth to say something and I think, is this any of my business? Did any of these people hire me to coach them with their lives? No. Okay. Are any of these people having this conversation because they know I'm a Course in Miracles student and they want to hear my perspective from a Course in Miracles perspective? No. All right, then why am I talking? Oh, because I'm so much spiritually superior to them. And I just want to let them know that, I'm actually a very spiritual human being and they're not. Is that WWJD on that one? Probably not what Jesus would do in that situation. Wow, that's why I'm about to open my mouth and say something, because I want you to know you're a moron and I'm smarter than you. Lovely, lovely. Probably don't need to say anything in this situation. So, that's what we're being asked in this entire section. I don't have as much to say about the next couple of sections because these first two paragraphs were pretty much summed it up. But in this entire section, we're being asked to really look at our thoughts. And when we look at our thoughts, if you're feeling that spur to say something, to react, to tell somebody something, to send that text message, I really need to go do this. I mean, even if it's just down to, I really need to go. Yesterday when we went to that party, I realized I didn't have a hostess. We were doing like a white elephant, but I didn't have a hostess gift. And I was like, I really think I should go get a hostess gift. I probably should. And then I used this whole thing. Why am I doing that? Because I want to seem like a nice person. Well, guess what? I'm a nice person. I don't need a hostess gift to be a nice person. So if I had a hostess gift and I had thought of it in time and I could bring it over, great. But now I'm going to try to drive myself nuts, probably drive Mike nuts, try to rush around to do all this stuff to get a hostess gift so that somebody else could think I'm a nice person. Does it make sense? So why am I doing what I'm doing? What is the true motivation, right? Because you could say, why are you getting a hostess gift? Oh, because it's an appropriate thing to do when you go to somebody's house for a party to have a hostess gift. I could keep it at that level, that high level, right? And I could fight for it at that level, and I could justify it at that level. And I know you all know what I'm talking about. You keep it at that level and you can win at this level. When you start coming down and that funnel gets really narrow at the bottom, and you have to actually look at, why am I doing this? Well, because I really want to be liked. Okay, well, could you be liked without a hostess gift? Because you can't be liked without a hostess gift. Maybe you guys aren't as good of friends as you thought you were. Right?
Right.
So that's what we're being asked in this section, to bring it down to what is my motivation in this. And most of the time, y'all, our actions, well, it's scary. It's scary when you actually start doing this, because our actions are so based on wanting to be right, wanting to be approved of, wanting to be liked, approved of, wanting to be seen as something other than who we really are. And if we really aren't acting from those places, we're really not doing a hell of a lot of anything except following our joy and just having a good time. Anytime you feel like you need to be doing something, the motivation is usually coming from a place that if you knew where it was coming from, you'd pretty much right there and then stop and be like, oh, I'm not going to do this. This isn't worth it. What message am I sending to myself by taking this action? So that's what we're going to work on this week. Wait, why am I talking? Okay, 4-3, Miss Stephanie, paragraph 3.
Any thought system that confuses God and the body must be insane, yet this confusion is essential to the ego, which judges only in terms of threat or non-threat to itself. In one sense, the ego's fear of God is at least logical, since the idea of him does dispel the ego. But fear of the body, with which the ego identifies so closely, makes no sense at all.
Okay, so I already kind of covered this, but about the fact that we're being shown how insane this whole thought is. It is insane for you to confuse God with the body, but this confusion is essential to the personal mind, which needs you to repress both. It does make sense that the personal mind is threatened by God, because your awareness of God does undo the personal mind. But it does not make sense for the personal mind to fear the body because it identifies with it. So I don't really have much to say about this, other than in the ego world, everything is threat or not threat. And this really comes back to that whole concept of ambivalence. One moment you're a threat to the ego, the next moment you're not. One moment Johnny at work is a threat to the ego, the next moment he's not. And so everything is in this ambivalence. But once you decide that you know who you are, that you are one with God, and that you're connected with God, then nobody can be a threat to you because everybody is one with you. It's a decision. So anytime you find yourself straying away from this place of being, this awareness, this it's almost like this grounded place within yourself. If you've ever meditated and you've gone to some place within you where it's just like a garden or just a bright light, whatever that is, where you just kind of, you're inside yourself. You're not outside, you're inside yourself, but you're in your own little world inside yourself. Notice that anytime you leave that place, you're walking away from your total source of power. So our goal is to stay internally focused in that little place within us and externally interact with the world without leaving that little place within us. Every time you leave and you go into somebody else's play and become a supporting character in their play, you get really confused. And it's fine for a minute or two. You need to remember how to get back home. But eventually you can get lost in somebody else's drama, in somebody else's world, in somebody else's crazy ups and downs and ego thinking. And all of a sudden, next thing you know, you're lost. I mentioned Lori's article today. If you guys haven't seen it, I'll actually share it in our group in Facebook. But she talks about this concept, and she talks about it as musical chairs. And then when you're playing musical chairs, when you're sitting in your chair, you're in that sense, you're grounded, you're in yourself, you know what's going on. And all of a sudden you get up and then there's chaos. You're running around and you just want to get back to a chair. You just want to get back to that sense of grounding because you're just in this chaos when you're out of it. And, you know, there's this fear of like, will I find my chair? Will there be a chair for me? All of this other stuff, but the chair never disappears in the spiritual world. It's always there. But you feel like I need to do something to get to my chair. It's like, you don't need to do anything, just sit back down. You know, and that's the doing versus being. The ego's like, well, it can't be as easy as just sitting back down in your chair. There must be some, you know, I need to build a new chair, a bigger chair. I have to have a better chair. That's the problem. The problem is my chair's not good. No, just sit your butt back down in that center of awareness and you're out of pain. You're out of suffering. You're out of your misery because you just reconnect. You just plugged back in to yourself. You can go out in the world not plugged in for a little while and be just fine. You know, you're on your battery life, but eventually your battery runs out and all of a sudden you're lost and confused and alone again. You got to go back home and plug back in. So, and the longer you stay plugged in, and the longer you stay in that source, the less of that confusion, wandering frenzy you're in. So that's the goal we're trying to go in over here. Okay, 4-4, Karen.
Yeah. The body is the ego's home by its own election. It is the only identification with which the ego feels safe, since the body's vulnerability is its own best argument that you cannot be of God. This is the belief that the ego sponsors eagerly. Yet the ego hates the body because it cannot accept it as good enough to be its home. Here is where the mind becomes actually dazed. Being told by the ego that it is really part of the body and the body is its protector, the mind is also told that the body cannot protect it. Therefore, the mind asks, where can I go for protection? To which the ego replies, turn to me. The mind, and not without cause, reminds the ego that it has itself insisted that it is identified with the body, so there is no point in turning to it for protection. The ego has no real answer to this because there is none, but it does have a typical solution. It obliterates the question from the mind's awareness. What out of awareness, the question can and does produce uneasiness, but it cannot be answered because it cannot be asked.
Okay, so the question is, where can I go for protection? Okay, let me read from here first, and then we'll talk about it. The body is the personal mind's chosen home. It feels safe in this identification because when you identify with the personal mind, the body's vulnerability is proof that you cannot be one with God. But the personal mind also hates the body because the body is not good enough for it. This is very confusing to you because the personal mind simultaneously teaches you to look to the body for safety and that the body cannot protect you. So when you ask, where can I go to be safe? The personal mind tells you to look to it for protection. But since the personal mind is identified with the body, this answer does not make sense either. Having no real answer for you, the personal mind suppresses your question. Though, out of your awareness, the question of where you can go to be safe does remain in your subconscious, and it makes you uneasy. But you will not find the answer if you do not ask the question. Okay, so there's a lot that's being said here, but really what we want to say, some of this I've already talked about. The ego says the body is its home, and at the same time says the body is unworthy to be its home. So insatiable appetite always wants more. The body by definition is weak, so you know that you cannot be God if you're identified with the body. That's the ego's goal. So you're only safe as a separate body, but your body's also not safe, is the ego insanity. So the question is, where can I be safe? Where can I be protected? And the fantasy comes because we know that you cannot be safe and protected if you see yourself as a body. But there's this feeling of, well, then how can I be safe and protected? Because it involves you trusting in your oneness and trusting in God, which is uncomfortable, and it's not the common way that people practice. And so what our ego does is just says, don't worry about it. Don't worry about that question. You go, okay, I'm not going to worry about it because I don't know how to answer it anyways. But that uneasiness just still sits in there of where can I go to be protected? So the point is to sit down and ask that question. Where can I go where I will be safe? And if you sit down and really think about that and do this exercise and really take the time this week to do this. We'll talk about it a little more next week. I won't say too much this week. But if you go and think about all the places that you think you could go to be safe, you will probably eventually come to the conclusion that something could still happen to you in every one of the places that you have come up with where you feel safe. For me, maybe my parents' home, it's a happy place for me. It's a safe place for me. But it doesn't mean that I'm completely safe there. I mean, things could happen there as well. You'll come to see that the only place that you're safe is when you go within. The only place where you're invincible is where you go within, because that's when you realize it's not about this physical body. It's not about this suit of clothes I'm wearing. It's about who I'm connected with being. And that's with your connection. That when I say go within, it's your connection to oneness. It's your connection to source. Anytime you leave that musical chair, every time you leave your chair and you venture out anywhere else, there's all kinds of potential drama that you can get involved in that makes you forget who you really are. But coming back and remembering who you really are is your only chance of safety. But do this exercise, because I did. It was very interesting to just what I wrote as where I feel safe and who I feel safe with and what makes me feel safe. And at the end, none of those things can completely protect you. At the end, your only safety comes from remembering who you really are and knowing that you can never be hurt anyways. It's not possible. The only thing that can hurt you is your thought system about what's happening to you, which goes back to paragraph 1 of, do you really believe that everything's for your highest good? So all of this, as you guys are seeing, is now coming back together. What are the thoughts you're thinking? What do you really believe in? And why are you acting in the way that you're acting? Who's motivating you, which is what we're going to get into in these next 2 sections as well. Okay, so 5. Leslie, correct?
Yes. This is the question that must be asked. Where can I go for protection? Seek and ye shall find does not mean that you should seek blindly and desperately for something you would not recognize. Meaningful seeking is consciously undertaken, consciously organized, and consciously directed. The goal must be formulated clearly and kept in mind. Learning and wanting to learn are inseparable. You learn best when you believe what you are trying to learn is of value to you. However, not everything you may want to learn has lasting value. Indeed, many of the things you want to learn may be chosen because their value will not last.
Yep. I said too. Had a long conversation with Lori about that one. I was like, I think I get it, but I want to make sure I understand it. So yeah, we're going to talk about it. Okay, so from Course in Miracles Made Easy. So you must ask the question, where do I go to be safe? To find the answer, you must be consciously aware of the question and not be unconsciously driven by it. Where do I go to be safe? To find the answer, you must be consciously aware of the question and not unconsciously driven by it. You must keep the goal in mind, but you learn best when you value what you are seeking. But remember that the personal mind does not value a lasting answer. Okay, so the ego mind is not looking to truly have this question answered because the answer is that your safety lies in oneness. So it's not going to say, you know, you're asking this really good question, where do you go to be protected? And let me tell you, it's not with me, it's with your oneness. It's going to say, you know, if you really want to be protected, you need to get your savings account up to $100,000. It's the only way you're going to be safe. That's all it's going to take. That's the goal. That's what you need to focus. Do you want to be safe? That's what you need to focus on. $100,000. Anything less than that, $99,000, you're not fully safe. That's where you need to focus. So you're going to start thinking, I need to learn how to save money because the only way I can be safe is when I have $100,000. And now you have a goal and you have learning and you think that what you're learning is going to be valuable because, you know, once you have $100,000, you'll be safe. So of course there's value in that. And what we're being told here is, indeed, many of the things you want to learn may be chosen because their value will not last. That keeps you distracted. You're so busy trying to make your $100,000 that you're completely not focused on the fact that the only way you can be safe is to deepen your connection with God. Now you've spent all this time and energy trying to get up to $100,000 and feel like crap about yourself because you're only at 96. You know, should have been at 100,000 by now. You know, Joe down the street, he's at 100,000. Mary told me she's at 120,000. What have I done with my life? Wasted my entire life. I'm not even at 100,000 yet. And none of those things are going to make you safe. That's how the ego works. Go back to paragraph 1. Do you believe that God's will is the right thing for you? Is it what you think you need? Or is it the life experiences and the path that God has laid out for you? Is that what's best for you? Because it comes back to that question over and over again. Because if you don't think that God's laid out the best path for you, then you're right. A lot of things in life haven't gone right for you. Because you thought you should have X, Y, and Z by X, Y, and Z date, and it didn't happen. You thought you should have been here, but instead you're there. You thought you were supposed to get this, but instead you got that. So my will or God's will? Because if you really think, okay, I really submit, I believe it's God's will, then everything's perfect right now. Because everything that happened was what was supposed to happen. Everything you've got is exactly what you should have. Everything that's coming is for your highest good and learning. So it goes back, we're again, see, there's a lot in this section, and really making you question. These are things we say we believe in, but if we really believed in all these things that we say we believe in, then we would be at peace. We would feel at peace with our life the way it is in this moment. And if we're not feeling at peace with our life the way it is in this moment, it's because we've allowed a belief of lack, a belief of fear, a belief that's in line with the ego, that's not in line with who we really are. And that's why just going back, that's why when we just do the opening prep, how good do you feel just hearing the opening preparation? It's like a shower of relief, just reading that 5-second opening preparation, because it's such a reminder of the truth of who we really are. So we keep coming back to that here in this section. Let me see if I have anything else. Oh yeah, so really need to have high focus on what our actual goal is. The goal must be formulated clearly and kept in mind. So is your goal $100,000 or is your goal peace? Is your goal safety? Is your goal oneness? What is your goal? Because that is the thing that, when all of these practices I've been doing, the non-suffering practice and all these different things I've taken on, it's like my goal is I only want peace. And if you only want peace, it means it's totally okay that somebody else thinks I'm completely wrong. It doesn't matter. Because me not engaging or defending myself or correcting them allows me to stay in that seat of consciousness, allows me to stay in that place of peace. Is that my goal? If my goal is wanting to be liked, wanting to be right, that's a whole different goal. It's a whole different set of behaviors that go with that goal. But if my goal is peace, I'm going to let a lot go because it's going to rob me of my peace if I take any action to correct it. So what is this goal? So getting clear about that's also in this. And choosing valueless goals is how the ego operates. It gives you a lot of goals that'll help you get to peace. You got to read that book, and that's how you're going to get to peace. You got to sign up for that workshop, and that's how you're going to get to peace. It's a lot of valueless goals that get you to that peace, which is the end of that. Okay, Miss Stephanie, paragraph 6.
The ego thinks it is an advantage not to commit itself to anything that is eternal, because the eternal must come from God. Eternalness is the one function the ego has tried to develop, but has systematically failed to achieve. The ego compromises with the issue of the eternal, just as it does with all issues touching on the real question in any way. By becoming involved with tangential issues, it hopes to hide the real question and keep it out of mind. The ego's characteristic busyness with non-essentials is for precisely that purpose. Preoccupations with problems set up to be incapable of solution are favorite ego devices for impeding learning progress. In all these diversionary tactics, however, the one question that is never asked by those who pursue them is, what for? This is the question that you must learn to ask in connection with everything. What is the purpose? Whatever it is, it will direct your efforts automatically. When you make a decision of purpose, then you have made a decision about your future effort, a decision that will remain in effect until you change your mind.
This is such a good paragraph, you guys. Okay, let me read from Course in Miracles, plain language. The personal mind cannot give you a lasting answer because the eternal only comes from God. The personal mind then keeps you preoccupied, busy, and seeking for safety and comfort in the world that you perceive without letting it rise to your conscious awareness that that is what you are seeking. The personal mind loves to present you with problems that you cannot solve. So in every situation, you must learn to ask, what am I really seeking? When you clarify that you're seeking for eternal safety, then the means to find it will automatically come to you. When you decided remembering God is your purpose, you set the course for the rest of your life, and it will remain in effect unless you change your mind. All right. Now this goes back to the previous paragraph and the goals that you've got. Okay, so ego is not going to help you come up with anything that's a complete problem solver, because that's not in the ego's best interest. Having problems keeps you over here and identified with your body instead of connected to this concept of oneness. So we're not going to find these eternal answers by looking at our body and looking at our separated self to get those eternal answers, which is why we pray. We know this. That's why we go into spiritual practice. We know that the situation right here, where we are right now, if we stay on this level, we're not going to find the solutions. We got to rise up to find some of these solutions. Okay. Okay, so the ego keeps you busy with non-essentials. Now, if you have ever woken up on a Saturday morning and you said, there's 3 things I need to do today, and you get to Saturday night and not one of them has gotten done, but your whole house is clean and you've done all these completely random things, and then somebody says, hey, why don't you come out? You go, I can't. I haven't gotten the 3 things I need to get done today. I'm so busy. And you realize, what am I busy doing? I only had 3 things to do today. What is it exactly that I'm busy doing? What is it that I'm actually trying to accomplish? Okay, that is exactly what the ego does to you with your entire life. Okay, instead of being focused on the fact that you just want peace and you want to develop yourself and you want to get to this level, it starts giving you all these different problems you've got. You know, you need more money. You need a bigger house. Your car's so-so. Probably should start worrying about that now. I mean, it's fine for now, but probably prudent to start worrying now about something that could happen next month. And you know what? I don't know. I think, are your kids okay? Really? Because anything could happen any moment and something could go wrong there. And probably should worry about that. And your health, is it really where it should be right now? Maybe need to start worrying about that too. Well, how the heck are you going to get anything done? It's a lot of things to worry about. It's a lot of things to figure out before you can finally be happy and you can finally have a little bit of peace. It's like Cinderella. The list just never, and you're never going to get to the ball. It's just not going to happen with the way that things are going over here. So the question you need to ask yourself is, what for? So I'm going to get this $100,000 so that I can feel safe. The ego's told me, once I have $100,000, I'm going to feel safe. But what for? What's that $100,000 going to do for me? How's it going to create my safety? What am I trying to be saved from? What's the terrible thing that's going to happen to me that this $100,000 is going to ward off once I have it? And you start asking those questions and you'll start to see how insane our thinking is. I remember some of you I know Janice Whiting in the call that she had with Jeanette and Ming. There was this call and Janice was like, why would you, I can't remember, I'm paraphrasing, this is probably not exactly how she said it, but this is how I'm remembering it. This is like this whole concept of, why would you save for retirement? And why would you worry about something so far in the future, like today? And it was given in this whole law of attraction concept, and it really made perfect sense, because it's like, yeah, it's a negative vibration we're sending out, like, I'm not gonna have enough money when I get old, so I better figure all of that out right now. She was very good about being cautious, not saying get rid of your retirement, but just that whole mindset of, I gotta be prepared for this what if scenario. That mindset is like a virus when we have no control over it. Control wholeness. This whole concept of, I'll be taken care of at the time that I need it. When I need it, the right resources will show up. But that's not what we're told. We're told, like, if you don't start thinking about this today, you're going to be really messed up in the future, right? And the truth is, if we got rid of that kind of worry, we take better care of our health, we take better care of our finances, and we'd probably end up by default doing all the quote unquote things that we should be doing. But when we get all these messages, all these health messages, I mean, anytime people start to tell me about all the horrible things that are going to happen if I eat sugar and if I eat dairy and all that, all I want to do is go eat a cupcake and tune the whole thing out. It's that fear-based mentality that causes us to go take the horrible steps that are actually going to cause the exact thing we're trying to avoid have happen. So, and the Course in Miracles talks all about that. I mean, this is the crux of A Course in Miracles. It's not about eating the cupcake or not eating the cupcake. It's about the mindset in eating cupcake. It's not about saving the money or not saving the money. It's about the mindset when you save the money. It all comes down to how you feel about those things. Are you in love or are you in fear? And when you take actions from a place of love, it multiplies automatically. And when you take actions from that place of fear, it doesn't turn out the way you want it to turn out, no matter how perfect the action is. So we keep coming back to what am I really trying to do here? What is my real motivation? And when it's love and peace, when that's your true motivation, there's not much to do. I mean, the action becomes really small at that point. So if you're really feeling a need, that's the way you can tell. If you really feel like, oh my God, this is a problem, I need to do something right now. If you have that feeling ever, that is a perfect time to do whatever you can to take a time out, because you're not coming from a place of love. You're coming from a place of fear. You don't want to create on that level. Nothing good's going to come from that level. So that, my friends, is section 5. And we will continue with section 6, which is what? So that's the ego body illusion. And we'll go to 6, the rewards of God, next week. And then I'll probably just do a video for creation and communication so we can finish chapter 4 up in December, and we'll start with chapter 5 in January. So any questions on the lesson, and then I'll turn the recording off, and then we can talk about anything you guys want to talk about. But any questions or comments on anything that we covered in the text today?
No, I'm good. It was really eye-opening. There was a lot more in there than I thought there was when I read it.
Me too, so, Karen, me too. Yeah. Now I feel like I have to go back, read it again, think about it some more. Yeah, I'm still not completely clear on section 5 at the very end. Many of the things you want to learn may only be chosen because their value will not last.
It's how the ego keeps
I know you explained it.
It's how the ego keeps you distracted.
Okay, like the $100,000 is not going to last, but peace lasts.
Well, it's not that the $100,000 is going to, well, the $100,000 is not going to last, but it's not that it's not going to last. It's that that's not how what are you really seeking, right? So that you say, how am I going to be safe? The ego says $100,000. So you go, okay, I'm going to go seek $100,000, but you're not seeking $100,000. You're seeking safety.
Right. Okay.
That was your initial question. Yeah. So that's okay. That's the whole thing. We think, okay, well, if I had $100,000 in the bank, life would be great. I wouldn't need anything.
I'd be safe and everything would be fine.
Everything would be fine. I'd have no problems. But if you have $100,000 in the bank and the mindset is one where you're still looking for safety, you're going to encounter a $120,000 problem in the future.
Right. Okay. I got it.
Yeah, exactly. So it'll keep telling you, Leslie, if you just figured out how to save $100,000, if you just went to this training course to learn how to save $100,000, you'd be on easy street. So it confuses your learning with what your real goal is, which is why it keeps coming back and saying, okay, you're going to get this $100,000, but what for? Did you guys see that? It's been coming up a lot in Facebook right now. There's somebody who goes and catches fish, and then this guy comes up to him, and he catches fish for a few hours a day and goes home. And so this man comes up and says, you're only fishing for a few hours a day. Why don't you fish for longer? And he goes, well, why would I fish for longer? And then you could catch more fish. And he goes, well, what would I do with more fish? And he said, well, then you could set up an operation, and you could sell more fish, and you could have all these other people selling fish for you and make a lot more money. And he goes, well, what would I do with a lot more money? And he goes, well, then you could just fish whenever you wanted to, and then, go home and spend the rest of your day doing anything you want. And the guy goes, isn't that what I'm doing right now?
Right. I read that, and I thought the same thing. That was great. Yeah. He was going to kill himself working to get back to the same place he already was.
Right. So that's kind of what this same concept in this paragraph, right? The ego is going to come and say, you need to do this, and you need to set that up, and you need to set this up. And in reality, you could already you could skip all those steps and just be at peace. You could rechange your goal to trust in God and say, wait, everything that's happening is exactly as it should be. I could be at peace with my life exactly as it is right now. And if you actually made that commitment truly, without ambivalence, made the commitment to keep your life as it is right now, then whatever you needed, if you needed $100,000, it would just show up without you having to put all that effort in.
Okay, that makes sense. It does. Okay, that's better. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anything else on this section? All right. So we'll call it a call. We're back to Tuesday next week. So Tuesday, what's the date? 18th? Tuesday the 18th. Thank you. Yeah. Tuesday the 18th, section 6, the rewards of God. And then I'll do a video for the last section, because otherwise we'd be meeting on Christmas, which actually would kind of fun, but I'll do a video for that week. So let me go ahead and stop the recording.